Welcome to For the Church, a podcast for the flock of Zion Presbyterian Church in Columbia, Tennessee. We want to help you think biblically about everyday matters. Zion Church exists to join Jesus and his mission to reach people with the gospel and then to equip his people to worship and serve. I'm your host, Keaton and Paul, and joining me is my regular conversation partner and co-host, Seth Scruggs. So here we are at the actual calendar end of the summer. If we were recording this on September 17th, I think fall officially starts with the 21st or 22nd.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Here in a few days. And we've spent the summer, as we said at the very beginning, a summer at the movies, and so we finally have one last movie before we finish out the summer. So folks, put away the sunscreen, the swimming trunks, the sunglasses, the pina coladas, and break out the sweaters. But with that, before you do it, listen to us talk about this movie.
We're entering your favorite part of the year.
Man, I'll say this. Hang on. Before we get, fall is my favorite time of year. It's the golden quarter, the burr months. And I embrace it in its fullness. Okay, I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm going to say it. I love all things fall, including pumpkin spice lattes. I said it.
Did you have one? Have you had one?
I have had 2 pumpkin
Excellent.
chai lattes.
Excellent.
I have not had my first pumpkin spice latte yet, but it's coming soon.
Good.
We can counterbalance pumpkin spice just because of the connotations that go with that. I also really love Oktoberfest beer. So there is that. We are Presbyterian, just in case you didn't catch it.
You contain multitudes, is what we're learning.
That's right. We're balanced on both sides. So whatever beverage choice, however feminine and or masculine in the most generic and stereotypical way, whatever. They're both delicious, people. They're both delicious. And
that's a hill you'll die on.
And that is a hill I'll die on. So, yes, I do love fall. Over the years, I have grown to really love summer.
Mm-hmm. So,
a summer at the movies is just tremendous because by the time May rolls around, I'm ready to summer so hard. And unlike probably 90% of the people in the state of Tennessee, by the time I hit the end of August, I am genuinely sad to watch summer end, but I am also genuinely thrilled to watch fall begin. The hallway in between, I talk about this all the time. People who know me get sick of hearing me talk about this. The hallway in between summer and fall. Oh, man. It is so good. So right now, as the kids say, I am living my best life. Ben Rector.
Good.
Looking at you. But anyway, that's enough about me. Seth, how are you?
I'm great. I'm very good. I'm just living the newborn dad life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm living my best life in a different way. And so that's why we've been delayed in finishing this.
That is,
as both of us are figuring out how to more me now, but you have an 18-month-old, but yep. I am figuring out how to be a dad and also, have a job and do this and,
sleep. We're not.
No. We're not sleeping. Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah. You got to cut one of those things. You can have children, a job, and sleep. Pick 2 of the 3.
Yep.
Pick 2 of the 3.
Yep.
But we're ready. This is great. This is a great one to end on. We even pre-gamed before.
But
we pre-gamed not in a Presbyterian way.
No, we just had lunch.
It was in a Baptist way.
We had sweet tea.
Sweet tea and food. Copious amounts of food.
Yeah. So and we're ending on what's probably the least summery movie
it's
of
not
the collection. And it's not We'll talk about it. We'll get there. There's a particular reason that we chose this movie. This movie is A Hidden Life, It's directed by Terrence Malick, and it's about Austrian farmer Franz Jagerstatter.
That's a real name.
I may have mispronounced that. He's an Austrian farmer. He faces the threat of execution for refusing to pledge loyalty to Hitler and fight for the Nazis during World War II because of his Christian faith, leaving behind a wife and 3 daughters and a village that cannot fathom his choices. It's a beautiful film.
Yeah.
Keaton, we haven't talked about this
we
at
have
all.
not at all.
Specifically.
We pre-gamed for 2 hours and we did not talk about this movie.
What did you think of it?
Oh, man. Yeah. So a few things. One, the World War II era. I love it. I love the World War II era. It's great. It's tremendous. The scenery, the setting of World War II Austria, right there smack in the Alps, is also one of my favorite places on the face of the planet that I've never been before. One day it is on my bucket list. I will go to the European Alps at some point. By golly. It's absolutely gorgeous. The way it's filmed, the scenery is tremendous. The setting is fantastic. I also really loved it because it's a thinker without being like, there are those kinds of thinkers, the thinker movies. Everything, everywhere, always and forever, to infinity and beyond. That's a thinker movie, but it's a different kind of thinker movie, and it's a fun thinker movie. The Matrix is kind of a similar, thinker type movie. Fight Club, similar kind of thing. A Hidden Life is a different kind of thinker movie. Still, it's incredibly thoughtful, while also being very linear. At least I felt like it was very linear.
Yeah.
Which feels like an appropriate term. I don't actually know what that means in regards to movies, but it feels artsy enough, so that's the term I'm going to use. It's like using colors and textures to describe musical instruments. That guitar is it's very cashmere. Like, okay, it feels very orange. Okay, whatever. But the movie, it's a linear thinking movie in that you're watching it unfold and developing, while also experiencing the internal tension in a really palpable way, of what all's going on. So I thought it was tremendous. It's really good. It is more of an artsy movie. If you're, if you have a palate for fine jazz, then you will love this movie. If you're kind of more from where I'm from and like your just general taste of music is, a little more Joe Diffie, then one of the greatest mullets of all time, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody ring a cowbell. There's a Joe Diffie reference on For the Church. But like, so anyway, then maybe you wouldn't enjoy it. It may be too artsy, and if you're more of a Joe Diffie guy, I would recommend, maybe something from Clint Eastwood, which are still kind of thinkier movies.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. I agree, and I do love the song John Deere Green. So we all can contain multitudes.
Clink, clink.
We all contain multitudes. No, I love this movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I'm a big fan of Terrence Malick's work, and we're going to talk more about that kind of in a meta sense here in a minute.
Yeah.
I think you absolutely hit on it. I think linear is a good word, especially considering a lot of the rest of Malick's work, which, like I said, we'll talk about. It's a beautiful film, both thematically and visually.
Yeah.
It is all of those layers. Like he's a master of his craft.
Yeah.
and everyone working on the film, the actors, the cinematographer, everything, just really coalesced here. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's. I broke it down again into kind of two themes. There are, any number of things. As I was kind of writing out our outline for today, I was thinking, there's so many angles that we could take at this movie.
Yeah.
Because it really, like you said, it's a thinker, and it's there's a lot that is left open for the audience to kind of bring something to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's not all there on the surface, and so I was thinking, there's so many things, but we'll start just this idea of sacrificial obedience, right? Yes. So, like what I said earlier, Franz Jagerstatter is this kind of dissident, not a dissident, really. He's an Austrian farmer.
Yeah.
He's facing the occupation from Germany.
Right.
And his tiny little farming village is being infiltrated with Nazis. And a lot of the people around him, including members of the clergy and of the church, as we know happened in this time, are kind of just caving in. Right. And some are saying, well, if you can't beat them, join them. Some are fully going, hardcore into the Nazi beliefs. Yeah. And Franz kind of feels this sense of kind of like he's going crazy, right? Yes. And so there's definitely some connections to Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah, for sure.
Which we're recording this on the 17th. Jeff talked a lot about in his sermon yesterday.
Yeah.
2 days ago, sorry. This past Sunday. So Franz and Bonhoeffer, they're actually contemporaries. I think they were actually in the same prison around the same time. I don't know that they would have known each other, but their time would have overlapped.
Yeah. Okay.
Very briefly. And really what this is, his story is, and it's the showing version of the idea that Christ bids us come and die.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason that we don't really know Franz's story is because he wasn't a pastor. He wasn't a thinker. He wasn't a part of why we know Bonhoeffer's story so well is because he was involved in the city of Berlin, and he was well known and all these things.
Yeah, and so many Bonhoeffer's one family were definitely they were very elite. Mm-hmm. But two, on it, like during even his own time, and he was a younger guy, but like Bonhoeffer, and I don't, this is a little bit of a side tangent. The Eric Metaxas biography has a lot of details. I think theologically it gets Bonhoeffer wrong.
Yep.
Sorry if you really enjoyed it. It's good. It's good. It tells the story well. It misses his so it paints Bonhoeffer as basically being like an evangelical, evangelical Lutheran. He wasn't. He was definitely what's known as a neo-Orthodox, and kind of ran in the Karl Barth school. If you know who that is, that's awesome. If you don't, then scratch everything, skip forward about 30 seconds, and we'll be on to something else. But in that neo-Orthodox school of Karl Barth, almost without a shadow of a doubt, and again, I don't agree with huge chunks of what Karl Barth says, but he was the most influential theologian of the 20th century. Right, if Bonhoeffer had lived much longer, he might have been number 2, right behind Barth, and it was almost as every bit as famous as a world-class theologian as Barth was. Is probably every bit as smart. So anyway, all that to say, Bonhoeffer is super well known. His books were very highly regarded, even in his own lifetime, and was a sought-out theologian. Had offers everywhere. So yeah, the contrast between a very simple farmer in Austria and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who even in like just academic circles, aside from the ecclesiastical connections, people knew Bonhoeffer, and you could spot him at like this. I know that guy. So
right, and we'll get to more of that here in a minute.
Yeah.
But so really, what Franz is doing is living that out, right? That idea that
for sure
that Christ bids us come and die.
Yeah.
And he knows the cost.
Yeah.
He knows
Yeah.
like, so the kind of core tension of the film is that in order to, when you're called up, when you're conscripted, you are asked to swear loyalty to Hitler and Germany and the Nazis.
Yeah.
And he refuses.
Yeah.
And he kind of makes it known that
Yeah.
he's going to refuse. And so he is called up and he refuses.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of core tension of the film is, what are you going to do when they call you? Why are you so adamant that you're not going to do this? How can you not go serve?
Right.
You know, in the war, all these people are dying. There are people, but he is willing to give up everything to do what's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it for us living on this side of it, it's very easy.
Oh man,
to say that we went on. There's actually a character in the film, this painter, this church painter.
Yeah.
In this very, very beautiful conversation, and one of the things that he says is, you know, everyone believes that they would not have been the person.
Yeah.
To betray Christ.
Right.
Right. Well, surely if I was there, I would not be calling in the streets to crucify him.
Right.
When the reality is, we probably would be.
Yeah, right.
Because that's human nature and that's who we are.
Yeah.
And what he's doing is he's drawing this connection between, well, all these people would say, well, they're I would never do this obviously wrong thing as they are supporting the Nazis.
Right. Right.
And so it's easy for us to say, well, that's what I would do. I would never swear loyalty to Hitler. But what if you knew that it meant your family losing every connection that they had? What if you knew that it meant losing your life?
Yeah.
And so much of the film is honestly just these conversations that Franz is having with these people who are just trying to wrap their heads around what he's doing.
Yeah.
And why in the world, and so like one person would say, you know, it's a sin against his family, it's a sin against his village. Like he's betraying these people. You're worse than the Nazis because they're our enemies, but you're a traitor.
Yeah.
Is what somebody says. You know, it's pride. You know, they just can't get their head around it. And probably the hardest conversation for me in the film is he's Catholic and he goes to the priest, and the priest looks at him and he says, well, you have a duty to the fatherland.
Yeah.
You have a duty to the fatherland. And then he quotes Romans 13. And it's an extremely, extremely powerful moment.
Yeah.
Because number one, he's going in the film, he's going to the pastor, the priest, to get some sort of wisdom.
Yeah.
Right. And he's immediately met with, well, basically what you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
And number two, he's having scripture weaponized against him. And so it's a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah.
Especially I think for people like us who are so entrenched in scripture that, you know, you hear it and you're like, in your mind, you're going, well, that's not what that means.
Yeah, right.
That's not what that actually means. And I'm sure that he at that time was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But when, you know, if Keaton, if you were to look at me and quote something, well, I've got to like suddenly reassess my understanding of scripture because I trust you. I trust your authority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even more so in the Catholic Church for people who believe in that.
Yeah.
You know, who trust that scripture is biblical, that structure is biblical. So it's a very, very, very powerful moment. And he kind of looks at everyone as like, well, the true faith, like to truly be obedient, is to do this thing knowing the cost.
Yeah.
Knowing what's going to happen, knowing that, I'm going to die if I refuse this. And I was thinking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the same kind of thing. I mean, it's very, very, the parallels there are very strong in that it's basically saying, well, I'm not going to bow to your idol. I am going to, I'm going to do what's right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it plays out. And it's also a really visceral movie, in the way that it feels like it's kind of an uncut edition. It's kind of stream of conscience too. Mm-hmm. There's an aspect of that, that you're just with him as he's like slowly, marching his way through prison, all of his time there, the stuff that goes on with that, and then eventually right up to, his execution. Spoiler.
Well,
kind of.
To your point, like it's the kind of movie that you can't really spoil because, as with so many of these kind of World War II movies,
yeah,
you know where it's going. Like you kind of know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so the job of the filmmaker and the job of the movie itself is to make it so that the journey is worth it.
Yeah. And you get right up to, apparently it's a guillotine, and you get right up to the scene where like they show you the guillotine, and then it's like roll credits.
Yeah.
And so, it leaves you kind of with a question mark. I don't know what happened, but obviously you know what happened. But kind of working you towards that, and then the tension the whole way through, always at the forefront of your mind, was really good. It was a brilliant move how they were able to, in overt ways and inovert ways, to really kind of bring that to the fore, and that always be the question of, is this right or is this not?
Yeah.
Which is how life works a lot of times.
And that feeling of like, well, it'd be so much easier.
Oh yeah.
It'd be so much easier to cave in, right?
Yeah.
And at one point, a character, I think it was the priest, who says like, well, just say the words.
Yeah.
You don't have to mean them.
Yeah.
God, what does he say? God doesn't care what you say. He cares what's in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Just say the words.
Yep.
Just make it easy on yourself. Just make it easy on your family. Just say the words, and he won't give that in.
Yeah.
Knowing the cost.
Right.
And
right.
I think that it calls us to a very certain kind of obedience.
Yeah.
And reminds us of a very certain kind of obedience where like we think, I would never.
Right.
I would never. And I think it makes us think about the fact that we probably would.
Oh yeah.
If given the chance. And so what can we do in order to steel our nerves?
Yeah.
So to be sacrificially obedient.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
The other major theme that I kind of pulled out was this idea of like ordinary suffering and ordinary heroism. So what we were saying about Bonhoeffer, right?
Yeah.
Like, Franz is not this super well-known guy. He isn't an author. He isn't a pastor. He isn't, any of that. He's not well respected. He's just a farmer trying to do what's right.
Yep.
And so I think what's so interesting is like for Bonhoeffer, there was a bit of this, and I'm not saying this is necessarily wrong, but it's like for him, there's a moral imperative, right?
Right.
He's feeling this which a lot of what he did, he did because he felt there was this moral imperative. I'm a leader of people. Yep. I need to make this statement.
Yep.
Which is good,
yeah.
well and good. Don't get me wrong. But Franz is like, I have to set the right example for my family.
Yeah.
No one knows who he is. And that's another thing that keeps being said in the film. They keep asking him, you think you're going to change the course of the war? You think that you're going to stop all this? And I think maybe there was a part of Bonhoeffer who thought, maybe I am.
Yeah, right.
Like I kind of am in a position where I could. Franz knows.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to stop this.
Right.
I can't stop this. Like that's not my job. My job is to be faithful where I am.
Yeah. To do what's right and in accords with my conscience.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, as I was watching this, the passage in 2 Corinthians. Yeah. When Paul lists all of his ailments, all the things that I was shipwrecked and I was stoned and I was this and that. And I was thinking about this idea that like how is it that Paul is able to get through all of that?
Yeah.
And how is Franz like, and anyone who, especially in World War II, like you hear these stories of Christians, Corrie ten Boom, The Hiding Place is like another great example of this, right?
Yeah.
How are they able to withstand beatings and torture in prison and knowing what's coming? And the answer is like, they aren't the hero of their story.
Yeah.
And if Jesus is the center of your story, and Jesus is the ultimate standard, and Jesus, this transcendent standard, then it's a lot easier not to cave in.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's not dependent on you.
Yeah, that's right.
You're not carrying the burden. The burden's already been carried.
Yeah. Yeah.
All your job is to be faithful. And if you die, you know what Paul would say, to live as Christ, to die as gain.
Yeah.
Why is he able to say that? Because he isn't the center of the story.
Yep. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And, you know, all of history is not unfolding as any of us are declaring it to be so. It's unfolding how Jesus says it'll unfold, and for his glory.
Yeah. And I think that can be a very encouraging thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because not that we don't matter, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, every individual matters.
Yeah.
But that ultimately we are a piece of the puzzle. We are not the center.
That's
we
right.
are not the picture of the puzzle.
That's right.
Francis Chan in Crazy Love uses this example where he talks about if you were an extra in a movie, right? And you rented out an entire theater for everyone, and you invited all your friends and family for them to see you for like that 2 seconds.
Yep.
That's what making yourself the center of the Christian life is like.
Yep.
Because what you're doing is you're saying, well, I'm this piece, but look at me, look at me, look
That's
at me. And in fact, there's a movie star over here who is actually leading the charge, who is actually the center of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the first person to say that Jesus is a movie star, but in this analogy,
yes.
in this analogy, he is. So I think that's something that we can take away from the movie. Anything else that you were thinking about as you watched the film?
No, those are like, that's another kind of brilliant things about it is with stream of conscience, anything, you know, you like, especially writers, authors who are more stream of conscience, like William Faulkner, you kind of write that stream of conscience perspective. It can get kind of difficult to track what's going on. And so here they did a great job of, it's got this stream of conscience type thing, but this is the main point: sacrificial obedience and ordinary suffering and heroism. So like they just kept that at the fore in such a good way to be like, you can't really miss the main point here. So absolutely, it was great.
So I wanted to broaden our conversation a little bit here and talk about why I chose this movie in particular. Because a lot of the movies that I chose are a little bit more popular. This movie is not very popular.
This was not.
It is not top 10 box office, none of that. So why talk about this movie? The first reason is that the movie is distinctively Christian. A lot of Malick's work is, I would say, distinctively Christian. Talk about this just a little bit more in a minute, but Terrence Malick is very reclusive, doesn't give a lot of interviews, so where he's at theologically, we don't really know. But definitely deep Catholicism in a lot of his work.
Okay.
Kind of in the Flannery O'Connor strain of Catholicism.
Okay.
Which one might even call evangelical Catholicism, but that's another conversation entirely. But it's you get this feeling that like the movie is made from someone who understands this plight, right? Who understands the Christian thought of and the Christian ideas around morality more than someone who is looking at it from the outside. I have, having seen lots of movies, interestingly, Christianity and spirituality is the subject of a lot of movies. Because people find it very fascinating. But one thing that you see is that there will be non-Christians who try to write Christian characters, and you can kind of tell, like, they don't quite have their head around, like, what does it mean to be a Christian?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be following in the way of Christ?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very clear that this movie has that in view, and is very much identified with what Franz is going through.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Our friend Brett McCracken at the Gospel Coalition called it a faith-based masterpiece.
Yeah.
Brett is famously a fan of Terrence Malick as well. And I'm inclined to agree. Like, I think that this is one of the best faith-based movies ever. I think that The Tree of Life would be Malick's best film. But
so you would
say
category. That this is, to the faith-based movies, this is the Joe Diffie of the faith-based movies. Clank, clank, clank. There's our cowbell again. Okay, sorry.
We'll come back to that. So all that to say, like, he has some really deep Catholicism in his work.
Yeah.
He's very deeply Christian. He understands what this is, and it's coming from a place of someone who is trying to follow Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
Writing a film about someone who is trying to follow Christ.
Yeah.
And making a film about someone who's trying to follow Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
If you are not me and not a absolute, like, film nerd and what one might call a film snob, you may not know who Terrence Malick is. So I'm just Terrence Malick comes from the mid 70s kind of class of filmmakers known as the New Hollywood, but he was always kind of outside of that because he made films like this one that are very loose, very quiet. So when you think New Hollywood, think Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas.
Yeah.
All of those guys, and Martin Scorsese is an interesting one because he also is very deeply Catholic, and that's another conversation entirely. But a lot of those filmmakers are known for making these very fast-paced movies, right? So a big turning point. There's a great book called Pictures at a Revolution by Mark Harris, if you're interested in this time period. There's a movie called Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. That is one of the kind of turning points.
Okay.
And it was known, the quote unquote New Hollywood, it was fast paced. There was violence, there was sex, there was all of this stuff. And so Bonnie and Clyde, for instance, is a movie about Bonnie and Clyde. They run off together and they shoot up people and there's violence and all this stuff. And Badlands, Terrence Malick's first movie, is very similar, on paper, very similar. 1973. About this couple who runs away together and goes on a shooting spree. Okay. But thematically and what he does with that, it becomes something very, very different.
Okay.
Malick made two films in the 1970s. He made Badlands in 73 and Days of Heaven in 78, and then disappeared for 20 years.
Nice.
What he did, we don't know. Came back in 1998 with The Thin Red Line, and which had dozens of movie stars in it.
Yeah.
The New World, and then Tree of Life, which is broadly considered like his masterpiece.
Okay.
And then several other films since then. He's known for he's what you think of when you think of like the artistic reclusive filmmaker.
Oh, of
right?
course, yes.
So the guy who goes away for years. So he will edit movies for years and years and years. He will make these really long movies. He spent 3 years editing Hidden Life. He has spent upwards of 5 years editing his current movie, which currently has no release date. It's a movie about the life of Christ. A lot of people use the words like evocative or lyrical or poetic when they describe his films, and I think that those are not necessarily wrong words to use for his movies, but I do think that they are incomplete, and we'll get to that. He's known for things like he'll cut out entire characters and essentially rewrite an entire movie. Christian Bale was quoted once. He was talking about, he did like 4 days on a Terrence Malick movie, and they said, "Or you're gonna be in this movie," and he said, "Well, either I'm not in the movie at all because I only did 4 days, or I'm the star of the movie. I'm not sure." That's just how he works. That's what he does. He will rewrite and cut out and add, and
that's great.
And so this movie, is told a lot through narration, a lot through these things, and the dialogue in a lot of his movies is incidental.
Okay.
Because what he's doing, more so than making a movie, it's almost like writing a book.
Yeah.
He's really trying to imply through images things that are happening, and then using the narration to carry that thematically forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this movie, more than some of his others, the dialogue is there are pieces of dialogue that are very important.
Yeah.
But a lot of what's really important, I think about there's a scene very early in the film where she's describing the first time that they met.
Yeah.
Fanny, his wife, is describing, the first time that they met, and he was riding this motorcycle and all these things. And really, he's just visually showing us what it was like, but in a very tactile way.
Yeah.
He has this very particular way of shooting, usually natural light, only with natural light, and with very wide angle lenses.
Yeah. And
what that does, it does a few things. The one thing that it does is, as you might imagine, a wide angle lens, you see a lot.
Yeah.
But a side effect of that is that a lot of the world is in focus. So in a lot of movies, just the actors in focus, everything else kind of falls off and is blurry in the background. It's out of focus. And maybe it's changing focus, rack focus from one thing to another. In most of Terrence Malick's movies, almost the entire world is in focus. It's just very wide, very open. So you as a viewer are having to take in and pick out kind of what's important.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not being directed as much. Another thing about that is the camera's usually moving in some sense.
Yeah.
So what that does is it's putting you into a character's point of view. You're not just an objective viewer.
Yeah.
You are somehow part of the film that's happening.
Yeah.
And also with those wide angle lenses, in order to get, to make the actor bigger on the screen, they're not putting on a different lens that will zoom in. They have to physically move the camera closer. And that distorts the actor's face a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're watching, you'll kind of notice it. But it also just, you can feel that, right?
Yeah.
Like you feel that you are closer
to
them. So when you have this really wide angle lens, you're seeing way more.
Yeah.
More is in focus, and you're having to get closer physically.
Yeah.
And that changes our relationship to the actors. It changes our relationship to the story in a way that that really connects us with them. And you add that to the narration and this kind of evocative, I'm rolling my eyes, imagery of that feels more like a memory.
Yeah.
To your point of stream of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
The editing is kind of choppy and back and forth, very much in a way that you're remembering things. And so all of that really puts us in the character's head.
Yeah.
And so I'm bringing all that up just to say that there's a certain way to watch these movies, movies like this one. I highly recommend doing that every now and then. I compare it to, reading, right? There's all these options that you have. You can read a comic book, you can read like a cheap pop thriller, or you can read like Moby Dick.
Yeah, right.
There's not inherently anything wrong with any of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, though, it's good if you read something that challenges you a little bit more.
Yes.
And Malick's work is very much that, right?
Yeah.
Like it is not the kind of thing that you're going to kick on a Saturday night when you've been, well, I might, but I'm a weirdo. It's not the kind of thing that you're just going to kick on because you're just kicking back, relaxing. Let's watch A Hidden Life or The Tree of Life or something like that. It's just not, it's not what you're going to do.
No.
But in terms of value in terms of beauty, in terms of art, in terms of truth, it is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
So I highly recommend it. Malik, he's not for everybody. Brett McCracken, I love Brett McCracken. If you are looking for some arts and culture writing from a Christian perspective, there are very few people I would recommend more than his work. He thinks everyone should watch Terrence Malick all the time. I do not, but he is a master of his craft.
Yeah.
Like he is truly, there's a reason that his movies are celebrated.
Yeah.
They are valued. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
I think especially as a Christian, someone who is making truly beautiful art.
Yeah.
Who is a Christian.
For sure.
It's worth considering.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched A Hidden Life yet, I highly recommend that. The Tree of Life is a little bit of a more difficult sit. I will preface with that. If A Hidden Life is not your thing, Tree of Life definitely won't be. But for me, it's one of my favorite films. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Anything, and I would read the book of Job before you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just as much as like great books deserve consideration. I think movies like this, movies like his deserve consideration.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have questions about that, you can ask me. I'm always glad to talk about his work.
Any movies.
Movies. That too. Yeah.
Well, all right.
I think that wraps us up for the season.
That is At the Movies. Our summer at the movies.
We'll be back later in the fall.
Yes.
With more stuff, and it'll be on Keaton's.
That's right.
Keaton is going to bring back some expertise on that one.
So we'll see what it is for season 6. Wow. Season 6 on For the Church. Stay tuned, and until then, I'll see you later.